Hello, welcome back to BBC News. I'm Marianne Mashiri. Right, let's take you to Iceland, where in the past half an hour, the news has broken that a town in the southwest of the country has been evacuated once again amid fears of a major volcanic eruption. Take a look at these. These are live pictures from Grindavik, where even emergency responders have been seen packing up their stuff and leaving. The town's population of around 4,000 was ordered to leave on Friday after thousands of small earthquakes affected the area. Well, scientists now say magma is moving closer to the surface. And of course, that's not really what you want, because that could precede an eruption. An eruption of another Icelandic volcano, do you remember it, in 2010, led to the cancellation of tens of thousands of flights, although experts don't believe a repeat of that level of disruption is likely. Well, our correspondent Jess Parker was in the town of Grindavik until a very short while ago when she was told to leave the area. Have a look at this.
So we were just in Grindavik, the evacuated town, with an escort by the authorities. And what was happening is residents were being taken to their homes in very small groups under supervision, being allowed to grab some stuff, and then they just had to get right out of their house as soon as possible, put the stuff in the car and then go. And then we were taken back out of the town on the understanding that we might be allowed to go back in to get a little bit closer and have a look at where the damage has particularly occurred following all of these earthquakes. But just as we were about to go back in, suddenly there was a bit of a commotion and we were told the whole area was being evacuated. A stream of cars, those that were in Grindavik, left. Everyone seemed to be packing up. We have not been told why. Obviously, there are big fears about a possible impending eruption. We didn't hear anything like that, but clearly something caused a concern. So we've had to leave the area now, along with everybody else.
Well, that's Jess Parker. Let's talk a little bit more about the science behind this. I'm joined by Professor Thor Thordarson, a professor in volcanology and petrology at the University of Iceland. Professor, thank you very much for joining us here on BBC News.
Yeah, good afternoon.
So this is very worrying. Are we going to get a volcanic eruption imminently, do you think?
Well, that remains to be seen. But what we are seeing at the moment, and the reason for this evacuation, is that they detected sulfur dioxide coming up from some of the faults and fractures in town, which suggests that magma is reasonably close to the surface at that location. And it's possible that it may actually erupt, because the inflow into the dike is estimated to be pretty high, or around 75 cubic meters per second.
So what does that mean? When the magma comes to the surface, what then happens?
Well, an eruption is defined as if you spew lava or magma out of a vent at the surface. So that if it comes up, then it will be an eruption. It's not an eruption yet because it hasn't broken the surface. But there is an intrusion or intrusive activity ongoing underneath the surface, sort of in the region of the Blue Lagoon, or what we call Svartsengi, just north of the town of Grindavik. And there was a crack that opened up on Friday and propagated southward underneath the town and out to the shallow sea south of the town. And magma seems to have followed and filled in that crack, and it seems to be moving closer to the surface. So it's not only going laterally, but it's also rising.
We're seeing some pictures actually of those sinkholes. Can I just ask you a question? Back in 2010, I was a BBC reporter, and I was, reporting on all the flights around Europe that had been cancelled because of the dust and the particles from the eruption of the volcano in Iceland. We're saying now this isn't going to be a similar event. Why is this not going to be as bad as that? Because
number one, the composition of the magma is different, and it was the 2010 eruption, the summit eruption of Eyjafjallajökull, was an explosive eruption, and which is more primarily driven by the expansion of magmatic gases, and it was a pulsating explosive eruption which supported an eruption plume to about 6 to 8 kilometers height, and basically loaded ash into the atmosphere at that height, and then that drifted away from the volcano and towards Europe. And because there was ash in the airspace, they closed the whole airspace at the time. Now, if we have an eruption near Grindavik, that will be a lava-producing eruption with lava fountains that may produce a little bit of ash, but not much. But it primarily be an effusion of lava, which sticks to the ground, and so we won't load the atmosphere with gases and ash in this on this occasion.
Professor, let me ask you this. We just saw a minute ago pictures of people evacuating from the area of Grindavik. I'm sure that the Icelandic population are used to these types of earthquakes, mini events. Do they take it in their stride? Is it a big deal for people as they get evacuated from their homes? Often, I imagine.
No, we don't really use evacuation often, and people of Grindavik have unfortunately become very used to earthquakes in the past 4 years or so, because we have had a number of seismic episodes in that region, and some of them associated with eruptions, like we had in 21, 22, and 23 in Fagradalsfjall. But others just associate with what looks to be magma intrusion below the surface. People in the greater Reykjavik area have also felt these earthquakes, and so it goes for the communities on the Reykjanes peninsula, and even the communities in South Iceland have sometimes felt few of those earthquakes, but that's nothing compared to the shaking that the people of Grindavik have experienced during this period of time. People further away, they don't really feel those earthquakes, and life goes on just like normal. So
I can imagine.
Last time we evacuated a town completely in relation to volcanic activity is the Westman Island in 1973. Of course, we have evacuated part of towns or even whole towns in relation to potential avalanches or mud flows, but that's a slightly different phenomenon.
Okay, well, Professor, it's been absolutely fascinating to talk to you, and I wonder whether, as things progress, if they do progress, we can get you back on the BBC to talk to us a little bit later, maybe tomorrow or in a few hours' time. Professor, thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. Yep.